To them young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you remember nothing else, you gotta be relentless.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, misery bots of all ages, back again with another video. And this time I kind of want to respond to Moore's Law is Dead. This is a YouTube channel in which he talks about a bunch of various tech stuff. In this particular case, he's talking about the Valve Steam Machine. And I have to say, I agree with almost everything he says, with the exception of one thing. Now, I'm somebody who believes that the Steam Machine should be about $400, no more than $500, but ideally should be about $399 because of what you're getting in that box. And all the speculations basically is saying that it's going to be more than that. It's going to be more than $500. People are speculating 600, 700, 800, 1,000. It's crazy the things that they're speculating. Uh, With what you're getting, I think it should be only 400. And Moore's Law is Dead basically proposes a way to get it down to around that $400 mark. And let's see what he has to say in regards to that and how to get it down to that mark. But before we start this video, if you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and check out the Adrian Rockstar SoundCloud in the descriptions below. Let's check it out.
Valve should consider doing a bare bones edition of the Steam Machine. So here's the current BOM sheet that I put together, like, what was it, like a month ago now? And I just think it's worth throwing it out there that if Valve had a bare bones edition of the Steam Machine, which means no RAM, no SSD, and no controller, and I would say no controller because I think most people will just use a PlayStation, Xbox, or some other controller they already have. So I would recommend a bare bones edition with no RAM or SSD or controller.
He has a point there. He has a point there with everything with the exception of RAM, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But when you look at the Steam Machine, there's two versions of it. I believe there's a 500 gigabyte and a 2 terabyte version. Now, people don't know how much the cheaper one is going to be, but people are speculating $600 and stuff like that. Again, I think it should be no more than 400. I mean, no more than $500. Excuse me, ideally $400, but he does have a point. Like as of right now, I don't think that the Steam Machine actually will come with a Steam controller. I never thought it would come with a Steam controller. They're clearly I clearly get the illusion or feeling that the Steam controller is actually going to be sold separate from the Steam Machine, and that $600 price tag that people keep throwing out is just for the Steam Machine. Because again, he has a point. Most people who are going to buy this Steam Machine already has some sort of controller. They already either have a PlayStation controller, or an Xbox controller, or some sort of third-party controller, or they might just be using mouse and keyboard, which you can use on the Steam Machine. You can use your mouse and keyboard on the Steam Machine. So I think most people already have some sort of controller. That's why I think Valve is going to sell it without a controller, because if you have Steam, you have some sort of gaming controller, your preferred gaming controller. Because the only way to order the Steam Machine is if you have Steam. And if you have Steam, that means you're a gamer and you have some sort of controller. So I think they're gonna definitely sell the controller separate. So, and for the same reasons that he gives, is that most likely the people buying this machine is gonna have a controller. Launching without an SSD, I can agree. A bare bones version that does not launch with an SSD, I 100% agree. Now, as it stands right now, I think the SSD has in it, the minimum is like 512 gigabytes. But if you launch one, let's say eliminating the SSD will save an extra, what, $50 or so, $60 or so. The Steam Machine already has like a slot for a micro SD card. So like if people want storage, first of all, people may already have a micro SD card, especially if you have like a Steam Deck or something like that, which there are over, what, 5 million people with a Steam Deck. You can literally pop the micro SD out of your Steam Deck and put it into your Steam Machine and use that as a memory card. You can literally do that. And if need be, you can probably go out and find like cheap SSDs for like $20, $30 or whatever, even if it's like a 250 gig or something like that. So I think they should sell that separate, like a bare bones version, because I think at this point a lot of people have some sort of not SSD, but micro SD card that they can use, that they can slot in, just so they can just get it out for like the cheapest price they can. Like Valve can get it out for the cheapest price they can.
You remove all of those things, they could profit at $400 with this thing. I'm just saying they could do
Mhm.
that. And again, I want to be clear. Everyone keeps arguing over subsidization. My entire argument for Steam Machine pricing, based on the analysis that I did, that by the way, Digital Foundry agrees with. When I say $400 with no RAM, no SSD, no controller, that's with like a 20-30% profit margin. So I think Valve needs to do this. I think it would really behoove them. And my assumption actually is that they have already bought RAM and SSDs for the Steam Machine, but I find it unlikely they bought everything they'll need for the next 5 years to support the console. So if I was Valve, what I would do is I would have like a $400 to $450 bare bones, no controller model, a $450 to $550 16 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte. Also, no controller. I would do no controller as well with the 512 gigabyte model that comes with RAM.
Yeah, see, like I can agree with that. 399, 450 version, bare bones. If that's what they need to do in order to get it down to something that's more consumer friendly, then by all means do it. I do not agree with the idea that he has for RAM. Think I think it needs to come with the RAM. I think every Steam Deck needs to come with RAM because it gives a bare minimum spec for the developers to optimize for. Now, if it's a situation where which he's going to suggest where people start putting their own RAM in there, first of all, the average Steam user who's going to be buying a Steam machine is not going to want to go through the process of putting their own RAM into the Steam machine. They're not going to want to go through the process of opening up their Steam machine to then put in RAM and stuff like that. They're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to do that. I can tell you that right now. I believe the majority of people who are going to be buying this are going to be casuals. Now, you are going to have some enthusiasts, don't get it twisted, who's going to take it apart and build it back up better than Valve. But for the vast majority of people who are going to be buying the Steam machine, this is going to be an entry level way for them to get into PC gaming. And because the majority of those people are, for the most part, casuals, they're not going to want to open up their Steam machine at all. They just want to buy a box, put it, and it'll work without them having to do any extra. This also gives the developers a bare minimum spec to strive for. So like if every Steam machine has basically the same components for the most part, with the exception of maybe the storage, which won't really affect anything in terms of game development, it gives the developers a bare minimum spec to hit. And think about it, the more people buy Steam machines, the more and the easier it would be for developers to want to optimize for that Steam machine because there's X amount of people with the Steam machine, and because all the Steam machines are exactly the same, specking or optimizing for one Steam machine, you'll be optimizing for everyone that has a particular Steam machine. You can't really do that if everyone has different RAMs. You feel me? So.
And then I would do like, yeah, $600, $650, 16 gigabyte, 2 terabyte controller model. And what you would do is, I don't know how much RAM they've stockpiled. I don't know. But what I would think the argument would be, let's just make it easy too. Let's just say it's like 650, 550, 450 or something.
450.
What they could do is say, here's the bare bones edition for 450. Here's the $550 one, and here's the 650 one. And again, it could be 600, 500, and 400. I don't know. And they would do a launch. You know, the 2 terabyte model that comes with a controller would probably be what most reviewers look at. It would sell out right away. I don't know how many they could make, but let's say they sell 500,000 consoles. You know, they sell like 300,000, half a terabyte, and then
The pricing model he just laid out, I could kind of agree with. I can get with. It's very similar to the Steam Deck pricing model. Right now, the Steam Deck is priced at $400. Then the OLED one is $550, and then they have like a 650 OLED, which again they're all the same. See, that's the thing. Like they're all the same. They all have the same RAM, GPU, and all that stuff. The only differences in the models are like the screen. Like the $400 has the LCD screen, whereas the OLED, the 550 and 650 have the OLED screen. But the 650 has like the anti-glare OLED screen and stuff like that, and they also have like extra memory. So like that's the only difference. I feel like they need to do the same thing with the Steam machine. So like taking out the RAM is not gonna work in that situation. But in terms of his price model, it's very in line with what they have going on with the Steam Deck, and I think that is a very consumer friendly kind of pricing model. So yeah, and I'm of the mind that yeah, the Steam machine should probably be about 400 at most, no more than 500. So it falling around 450 falls around that borderline consumer friendly kind of deal. So
200,000 terabyte ones, and then they just have the bare bones one there, and then that's mostly what you're able to order on the Steam
hmm
website.
hmm
But whenever they get a chance to get a good deal on RAM and SSDs, you will see the non bare bones editions come into stock and you can order them. It's going to be hard to get them. They often won't be in stock. But I'm sorry, I think Valve is going to have to do this to respond to the market because I do believe there will be RAM shortages at least through the middle of next year and likely till the end of next year, maybe even into the following year. And
And I can understand why he thinks that they should not add the RAM because there is a RAM crisis going on. There is a shortage in RAM. RAM prices are absolutely insane. So in order it will save Valve money to not include the RAM, and of course they can then pass those cost savings to the consumer, but in this particular case, like nah, I don't think that's a possibility, unfortunately.
so we'll see what happens. But I would be very, very surprised if they don't do that. And if they do that, it's a big deal. And I want to be clear about this as well. There's a real argument to be made. Like you could be Valve and you could be like, hey, look, I know you don't probably need our controller. And I know that it sucks you have to supply your own RAM and SSD for the $400 bare bones edition or whatever it costs. But that old HP laptop that you have laying in your closet right now, get out a screwdriver, right? Go get the SSD out of it. We're letting you do that. Like, go if you have an old mini PC or again, like an old laptop that might have like an 8 or 16 gigabyte DDR5 stick in it, go get it. I think a lot of people probably do have old laptops lying around right now that could have RAM and certainly will have an SSD they can pull out. And I think it would really, really, really behoove Valve to offer a bare bones edition so that if they run out of RAM, if they run out of SSD for reasonable prices, they can continue to sell something, but also they can market it. They can say, go dig up your old laptop and contribute less to e-waste. Pull out that RAM, pull out that SSD, you know, go see if you can get on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, see if you can get a hold of a stick to get that thing running early without having to pay extra. I just
So I see what he's doing there, and it's not a terrible idea. I want to say it's not a terrible idea. Again, it will reduce e-waste. It will also, you know, be able to put Valve in a position to save a bunch of money as well and pass that savings down to the consumer. But at the same time, at that lower price range, that's when you're getting into the more casual consumer market. And the more casual consumer market is not going to want to take apart their old PC or their old laptop in order to take out the RAM and the SSD. They're just not going to want to do that. They're just not going to want to do that. The people that's going to be buying it for $400 are the casual console like gamers that just want to buy something and it just works off the shelf. So now those casual gamers will buy memory cards. Like they will buy like a micro SD if that's what they need. They will do stuff like that and then with the Steam machine, there's literally a slot right there for the micro SD. It's literally just plug it and then turn it on and play. So the people at that particular price range, they're not the enthusiasts. The enthusiasts are the ones that would go into their laptop and they'll dismember it in order to, or just take it apart in order to take out the RAM and the SSD, and then take apart their Steam machine in order to then put it into their Steam machine and stuff. The enthusiasts will do stuff like that, but that 400 price range is not. It's not gonna be appealing to the majority of, well, let me not say not the majority of enthusiasts, but that $400 price range is going to garner the attention of the more casual consumer, unfortunately. And I promise you, they are not going to want to do that. They're going to end up returning it if they know how to. Because first of all, they're not even going to have the information. Most of them, or our casual consumers, are going to look, oh, I can get this machine for $400. Oh, people are talking good about it. All right, let me pick that up real quick. Maybe let me buy it for my son. Let me buy it for my daughter. Let me buy it for my friends' kids or whatever, my grandchildren or whatever. And they're just going to buy it and give it to them. And then that kid's going to try to play it and won't be able to use the machine. And then when they look it up, they're going to be like, oh, you got to take it apart and all that stuff and add these other. Then they're going to just return it. Like, you know what I mean? So at that $400 price range, I see what he's talking about. I mean, that's a good idea. It's not a terrible idea. But maybe Valve should be the one doing that, taking apart old laptops and taking the VRAM in order to save money. Because, like, again, the casual consumer who are going to be coming in at that $400 price range for the most part are just not going to want to do that. But yeah, not a bad idea, because there are a lot of like old laptops and PCs that people aren't using that has RAM in it that they can probably use. But then that also poses the question, like, what kind of RAM? Like, some of them might have 8 gigabytes of RAM, some of them might have 16 gigabytes, some might have 32 gigabytes, but then puts it in a position where it's fairly difficult for developers to optimize for, because they might be optimizing for just the 16 gigabytes of RAM that the other Steam machines are going to have, like the 550 and 650, according to what he's saying, are most likely going to have, because I think that's what Valve said. It's supposed to have like 16 gigabytes of DDR4 or 5 RAM or something like that. And that's the other thing too, like things that they're pulling out of these other laptops may be older versions of RAM. It may be DDR2, DDR3, DDR4 RAM, which is slower RAM and stuff like that. And again, it might be an 8 gig RAM. So you might look a video like, oh, this game runs beautifully on the Steam Deck, but if they have like a DDR2 8 gigabytes RAM, well, they're not going to get the same experience as other people. So, and the devs would have more than likely not optimized for that lower threshold of RAM. So that's just my idea on it. I agree with everything else he says, though. It does not need a controller. I don't think it needs a controller if that's going to help reduce the price of the Steam machine. I don't think it needs an SSD card necessarily. Like, for example, the base model Steam Deck, the one that came with 64 gigabytes of memory, which wasn't, I don't even think it was SSD memory, but it was 64 gigabytes of memory, sold very well. It sold very well. You know what I mean? Because people didn't have a problem with buying a micro SD card and just sliding in a micro SD card and getting an extra terabyte of memory. Like, for myself, I think I have a 500 gigabyte, but I have a like 1 terabyte micro SD card in my Steam Deck. So I think that one would be far more acceptable than just not putting the RAM in there. So with that being said, let me know what you think of this video. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let me know what you think. Do you think they should have a bare bones model? What do you think that bare bones model should consist of? Do you think it should have the RAM? Do you think it should not have the RAM in it? Do you think that people coming in at $400 will buy RAM and or take apart their laptop to take the RAM out and put it in there? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
To them young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you remember nothing else, you gotta be relentless.